Okay, excellent. Welcome to another episode of the InsurTech Leadership Podcast. If you've been in insurance long enough, or maybe driving a car long enough, you may still picture TomTom as a device attached to your windshield, but today it's something very different. And on this episode, we're joined by Vinod Poomalai. He's the head of InsurTech Product Marketing at TomTom, where he leads the go-to-market for their insurance and InsurTech vertical. Vinod and his team help carriers, brokers, actuaries, and InsurTechs plug TomTom's location and traffic data directly into risk models, pricing engines, and telematics programs. We'll unpack how moving from static territories to live location intelligence changes underwriting, claims, and portfolio strategy, and what kind of talent and leadership it takes to pull that off. We'll also talk about how Vinod explains his role to people who still think TomTom just gets you to the nearest coffee shop. Welcome, Vinod.
Fantastic, Joshua. I'm super happy to be here. Thanks for that nice introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe just to start, you describe yourself as the GDM product leader for the insurance and InsurTech vertical. And when did that intersection of mapping and insurance first click, and kind of how did you end up in this position?
Yeah, so I need to go back a few years since we're starting at TomTom to answer that question, Joshua. So I joined TomTom 7 years back to lead the sales for India and Southeast Asia. There was a time when we were launching TomTom enterprise business in that region, sort of a 0 to 1 experience for me and as well as for the company in that region. So what that really allowed us to do is experience launching an existing product into a new market. Right? We had TomTom as the leader of automotive world in US and European region, and working with big tech companies, governments in the more developed part of the world, but not so much in the emerging countries, right? Even though TomTom was well recognized in the developed world, but not so much in India and Southeast Asia. So that's where we pivoted the narrative in that region from TomTom being known for portable navigation devices to more enterprise and automotive focus, and we were able to grow the business in that particular area. And that led me to move to a different role in TomTom to launch what we call now as Orbis product portfolio, which is by far the most innovative thing that happened in the mapping world in the last 3 years. We took a totally different approach to map the world. We brought in a lot of open data sources along with proprietary data sources, and we launched this new product in the market called Orbis, which is a global product. And that really set the stone for us to enter into the insurance market. Right? Once we launched Orbis, what we realized was Orbis had a lot of value propositions for industries on which we were not traditionally focused on. For example, insurance came up as one of the key verticals which was primed to be targeted with the new portfolio of Orbis products that we had. So I started looking into the growth initiatives at TomTom for Orbis products, and then we ranked all the different verticals or markets that we saw Orbis being applicable for, Orbis being very valuable for. What we realized is the insurance market as a whole is very underserved when it comes to location data, traffic data, and so on. So that's where we decided, okay, there's a great product that that delivers great value, and there is a market which is literally underserved when it comes to location technologies and traffic technologies, and that's how the match happened, right? And we decided, okay, this is the market for us to focus on and double down on, and that led me to be the person to lead the go-to-market for TomTom in the insurance space.
Got it. And so, how is the data that you guys accumulate and then process and analyze? How is that different from what was available, I suppose, sort of, broadly, period, but in particular as it pertains to the insurance and InsurTech segment?
Yeah. So We took a philosophical change in how we build maps. So historically, we built maps with only proprietary data sources. That meant data coming from our own probe data, our own partner-led data, and so on. What we changed with the new portfolio of products with Orbis is we collaborated with a lot of big tech players in building what we call as Overture Maps Foundation, which is an open standards for map data building, and we leverage that to build Orbis maps. So what it means is there is a lot of collaboration in building the map data from coming from big tech companies, and as part of that, we are also leveraging the open community data, for example, OpenStreetMap data, which is also integrated as part of Orbis map data. So what Orbis has become is the best of open data and proprietary data, which allows for really specialized use cases in insurance. For example, when you think of insurance use cases, like say, for example, you want to do a usage-based insurance program and you want to detect all the speed violations. So you need to have a really good coverage for speed limits, highly accurate speed limits, and a high level of freshness for speed limits, right? And all of this is possible only when you have enough data sources powering your map data. And that's why this collaboration of the big tech players, the open community, along with all the proprietary data that TomTom brings in is super important, and why it makes Orbis best suited for the insurance use cases like UBA programs.
And so what's distinctive about like the proprietary data versus the more open source or publicly available data? Is it capturing different data points, or is it capturing sort of similar data points in different ways and then you can leverage it differently? Like how does this kind of allow you to have a better set of data in the way you described?
Yeah, it allows us to do a couple of things. One is it provides a more complete data set because you are merging open data and proprietary data, because you are leveraging the strengths of open data, your strengths of the community, and also you are leveraging more validated, more proprietary data that we are able to bring from our own data sources, right? That's number one. It makes the data more complete. And number two, it makes it more accurate because you have multiple data sources to verify if a particular data point is correct, right? For example, when two different data sources say the speed limit on a particular road segment is 80 kilometers per hour, then you're highly confident to go ahead and make the change rather than depending on one particular source, right? It makes it more accurate. And having more sources also allows you to update it faster, right? Say, for example, the speed limit changed on a particular road segment. So one of your sources is going to capture it earlier and is going to tell you, what the speed limit on the road segment has changed, and you're able to go and update that faster than what you could do with depending on one particular data source, right? So this is what it allows to do, right? It actually enhances all the three dimensions of your map data quality because you are depending on more sources.
Got it. And so is TomTom strictly a data company at this point, or is it also a data and telematics company?
So we are a data and services company. So what it means is that we have the map data, traffic data as the base, and we build services on top. For example, we build APIs on top, map APIs, traffic APIs, and we build our navigation software on top. For example, navigation SDK is something that we build on top. Right, so we are a map data and services provider on top. So what it means is a telematics company could leverage either our map data, or they could leverage our APIs or SDKs in building their telematics program. So we provide the flexible set of tools that is needed for somebody to build their telematics applications and telematics software, and customers pick and choose how they want to leverage our technology in building them.
Got it. And so which use cases have you focused on in insurance so far, at least to start? And, what future use cases do you have planned to develop?
So currently, our focus in go-to-market is, when it comes to insurance, is property and casualty insurers. And so that's has been our focus. And within that, we focus on 4 different use cases. 3 use cases were with auto insurance and 1 use case with property insurance. We start with, in auto insurance, we start with risk modeling. right? That's where we see this tremendous amount of value to be unlocked, right? When I say risk modeling, it is to do with the territory risk modeling and usage-based driver programs, right? These are the two risk models that primarily get powered by our map data, traffic data, APIs, and so on. On the other side, we also help auto insurers build claims validation fraud detection models with the same data. Right? It's a different use case, but that's something that is gaining a lot of traction, and we see a lot of innovation happening on that front. So that's on the auto insurance part. When it comes to the property insurance, it's more straightforward. It's to do with assessing the risk associated with a property when it comes to, say, calamities, nature disasters, and so on, right? How close is a property to a flood zone, earthquake zone, and so on, right? So that's to do with the property insurance. So these are the four use cases that we primarily focus on in our go-to-market. To give you a feel for the kind of value that customers are able to derive for these use cases, you've seen auto insurers improve their loss ratios by as much as 2%, right? Which is humongous when it comes to the scale at which some of these companies operate. And it's all because traditionally these models are very underserved with location data. And by incorporating the map data, traffic data, it unlocks a whole new dimension for them to capture when it comes to risk assessments, and that's why they're able to see such drastic improvements when it comes to loss ratios.
And how exactly do sort of, having these live traffic patterns and kind of real-time mobility data change the equation relative to the risk models that were built on static territories and more basic assumptions?
Yeah. So when it comes to territory risk models, it's mostly about understanding risk associated with where a person drives. Right? As Joshua, as Vinod, we have a typical driving radius where 80% of our driving would typically happen, right? And that has a huge implication of the risk associated with us as drivers. And that's what essentially the territory risk models capture. And if you look at what really determines that risk from a location data perspective or mobility data perspective, it's about, okay, what is the number of vehicles seen in a particular road segment where I typically drive, right? What is the speed variability? What is the congestion levels? All of this is a direct indicator of how risky is it to drive in that particular road segment. There's also a static data component to it. For example, how windy is a particular road segment? What is the gradient? What is the curvature? These determine the riskiness of the road itself. It's very straightforward, right? More curvy a road segment is, more altitude a road has, probably it's high risk to drive in those road segments, right? And this is what the location data and traffic data helps capture for the territory risk model, right? There's a lot of pointers and predictors in the location data and mobility data to predict the risk associated with driving in a particular location.
And are your customers, are underwriters or claims professionals accessing this data embedded into their systems? You have sort of standard, you mentioned your APIs, or are you helping, you said you're a services company, are you helping to build things that are kind of more bespoke versus just connecting through APIs?
Yeah. So probably I need to correct what I meant by the services part, right? So when I say services, it's the APIs and the SDKs that we call as services in itself, right? It's not professional services. We don't really help customers go and build customized solutions. That's not what we do. We build the technology layers, be the data or the services on top, like the APIs and SDKs that customers leverage, right? So with that context, how customers leverage our map data and traffic data for modeling is as raw data sets. Because if you go into building models, it's mostly about having access to the underlying data so that you are able to train your algorithms based on that. And that is not straightforward with using APIs or SDKs, right? it mostly involves taking huge amounts of data and training your models with that data. And that's how customers consume. They typically use one of their training platforms or preferred cloud platforms like Azure in taking TomTom data and training their own models on those platforms to be able to deploy it for their use cases.
Got it. And are they typically layering this in with other data sets? And, are there best practices around this kind of data orchestration?
Yeah, so that is the most normal way for them to build a data mod, a risk mod, right? What we provide is data related to location, data related to traffic, and so on. And typically, this gets combined with other data sets that customers have. It gets combined with the demographic data. It gets combined with the historical claims information that they have. All of this needs to come together for them to be able to do that modeling all together, right? And that happens at the customer. And so typically they're taking our data and they're combining with other data sets in trying to build that model. And why Orbis data is really suited for this merging of this data is we have made it really easy for customers to bring all of this data together. So what we've done in Orbis is we have introduced what we call as stable IDs, which is directly coming from the underlying Overture foundation that we are working with, and we founded along with the big tech players. So that allows for data scientists to easily merge other data sets, which used to be a nightmare for them, working with the older generation of maps or some of the map data sets, which are very proprietary out there in the market. It's used to be a nightmare for them, and that now has really changed with us coming out with in the market and launching Orbis, where customers now have access to these GERS IDs or stable IDs, which can be leveraged to merge other data sources and build these models easily.
Are there any specific examples that really show off how this approach is kind of a futuristic version of insurance operations and indicative of where the industry can go?
Yeah. So what we observed is when you have to merge different sets of data, there's huge amount of costs involved because you need to continuously keep on doing this integration every time there is change in data, right? Number one, you need to spend people's time. You need to spend resources on realigning and merging this data, and you need to continuously make sure it is correctly aligned. You need to make sure it's accurate, and so on. So what this creates is what the industry calls as a data conflation tax. So because you're conflating a lot of data, you're literally paying a tax because of this problem that exists in the industry, and that is what is really going away with us coming out with Orbis and introducing the stable IDs, which reduces the whole data conflation tax, which makes it really easy for insurers to build their models. And that's why this is super innovative for the insurance industry. Right? In general, it is a geospatial industry-wide problem, but this is more pronounced in the insurance industry because insurance industry generally handles petabytes and petabytes of data, right? And they are building risk models with a lot of data.
And are there particular, success metrics that clients have identified that they think you can help them with, and that you're, trying to measure as best you can, and focused on, helping with those specific use cases?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, what our clients really care about is when it comes to risk models, it's loss ratios. When it comes to driver scoring, is how well am I capturing the risk associated with the driver, and how accurate is my driver scores. And when it comes to claims or fraud detection, it's about how much fraud I'm able to reduce, how fast I'm able to validate the claims, and so on, right? So the end business metrics really differ based on the use cases and what is relevant for that particular use case. But when you trace them back, it basically comes down to three different metrics for us for delivering map data, traffic data. Number one is how accurate is it? How rich? Number two is how rich is it? And number three is how fresh is it? Right, and that's ultimately what impacts the end metrics for our customers from a location data and traffic data perspective. And that's what we measure ourselves on, because ultimately it's about do you cover all the countries? Do you have all the attributes that is needed? And how often these attributes are updated and how accurate are they? Right? And that's how we measure our data that we deliver to the insurance companies.
So you talked about the challenges just in kind of getting clean, consolidated data, but then obviously you've got tools laying on top of that. Now you've got, AI software and agentic AI coming into play, and so, have you observed best practices of folks in the insurance industry, or maybe more broadly as well, in terms of how they kind of build the foundation and then build the tech stack on top of that, so that it isn't just such a wide-ranging science experiment of tools, but allows them to leverage this type of geospatial intelligence.
Yeah. So I need to call that out. We have been pleasantly surprised by the level of experimentation and openness in the insurance industry. Right? When we started, we had the hypothesis that it's highly regulated, so we would see a lot of hurdles or a lot of lag in AI getting adopted in the insurance industry, and we are totally proven wrong at this point. What we're seeing is there is a lot of experimentation and innovation happening in the insurance industry with AI. Specifically, we have a lot of customers who are experimenting in claims validation and fraud detection with agentic AI models. So, to give you an example, so what's happening now is customers are building agents which could, number one, validate claims faster. Right? They want to make it faster so that customers on average see faster claims validation. That's number one. And number two is they want to reduce the number of frauds. Right? They want to be able to capture more fraudulent claims and reduce the losses associated with it. And these two as the key goals is driving a lot of agentic AI adoption. So what we're seeing is customers are leveraging our traffic data in validating auto insurance claims. For example, when they get a claim saying this happened because of a traffic incident or a traffic accident or a traffic jam or a congestion. Now customers have the ability to go back in history and validate some of these claims with the help of the mobility data that we provide. And they are trying to do this in an automated way where they want to build agents which talk to our technology in an AI compatible way, like an MCP server or our own AI agents, and be able to automate this whole claims validation process. So what we are seeing is, even though we talk about a lot about AI and agentic AI, it's still coming down to the basics of having the data infrastructure right, where the data is accurate, complete, fresh, and so on, because junk in, junk out, even in the agentic world, right? So that's one customers are really focusing on, right? The quality of data that goes in, and they're also focusing on making sure the AI agents that they build is explainable, meaning when say a claim gets rejected, they want to be able to trace back and say why it got rejected, right? Is it because the reason the traffic reason, the traffic incident reason didn't match, right? Or is it because it was a fraudulent document that was produced, right? So they want to be able to trace back the decision and be able to explain the reasoning why the agent made a particular decision, right? And that is driving the point that you want to be able to have build your agents on good structured, highly accurate data, so that you are able to still trace back all the decisions to the foundation.
Have you observed any particular kind of, whether it's sort of organizationally or more narrow to a specific team, have you observed how some of the clients that are using best practices have kind of structured their teams in order to bring in this data and leverage this data so it's a true strategic asset?
Yeah. So we see the strong emphasis on number one, the usual data teams, right, who are making sure the data foundations are correct, right? They're which are teams which always existed, right? And now they're getting into more focus because they are the foundation on which everything is going to get built. Number two, I think this is where a lot of new skills are being brought in, right? Which is to do with um, the LLM part in itself, right? Bringing in people with that expertise, which probably many of the organizations did not have 3 years back, right? I think that is where we see a lot of new hiring, a new team being assembled, and they work in conjunction with the underlying data teams. And number three is there is lot of emphasis on the customer facing teams in itself, right? For example, who are the domain experts who are able to translate the customer needs, so that the whatever the AI team is building is still connected to delivering value to the customers. At the end of the day, it's not becoming science projects and demos in itself, which is not connected to the reality, right? I think the domain expertise is becoming more important than ever, so that all the cool technologies are channeled towards solving real problems and delivering real value, rather than becoming cool science projects.
Great. Vinod, this has been a super interesting conversation. Is there anything else that we missed or you'd like to cover before we wrap up?
No, I think it was a great conversation. Fantastic.
All right. Excellent. Well, Vinod Pumalai, head of InsurTech Product Marketing at TomTom, thanks so much for joining me on the InsurTech Leadership Podcast.
Thanks, Joshua. It was fantastic to talk to you and your listeners. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about in the future. So if you have your interest when it comes to data, and building risk models, claims models, fraud models, do free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to have a chat.
All right. We'll make sure to have the info in the show notes, and have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon, Vinod.
Thanks, Joshua. Thank you.